don't see anything.
Well, it takes a little bit.
All right, there we go. Uh-oh, hold on. My sound on my version of the stream is up, and that would get very confusing. So, all right, hello, Renegades. Welcome. I'm Scott Gaeta, and today we are going to take a closer look at Scott Pilgrim Miniatures The World. This is a game that we've been working on with Oni Press and Brian Lee O'Malley for like at least a year, maybe 2 years. This has been in various stages of development. So today we're going to focus mostly on the miniatures. Everything I'm going to show you today is a near final prototype, but not everything is exactly the way it'll appear when it comes out of the factory. These are works in progress for the most part, but as we go through it, I'll kind of explain each thing to you. So the first thing we're going to do today is look at the characters that come in the base set. So I'm going to put some of these guys up here, and then Desiree's going to zoom in so you can see them a little closer. So Scott, for example, there. When we say pre-painted, it's a little misleading. It's pre-painted as well as molded in the appropriate color plastic, which is really expensive to do, but it produces a really nice final effect. So the scale of these miniatures goes anywhere from mid 40 millimeters all the way up to a little over 50 millimeters per character. So to give you an idea, here is a D&D miniature from a very popular line. So the D&D miniature is awesome. It's really cool. But just to give you an idea of scale of what that means, because I know not everybody can relate to millimeters. So this is a typical D&D miniature, and there's Scott. So let's show you some of the others. So that's Scott Pilgrim that comes in the base game. You can notice like some of the detail on here too. As we were going back and forth, you'll notice the teeth of the zippers, like the shading on the teeth of the zippers is really detailed. That was something Brian really wanted to get right. The detail on the bottoms of the shoes, on the sneakers that he's wearing, even the trim on the bottom of his shirt and collar and everything else. We went through multiple rounds to make sure that we got this as right as possible, and Brian was really involved and really helped us with that. So there's Scott. And we have Steven. So Steven there, the talent. So my favorite is Kim. I really like her because she's cranky. So Kim, again, just really detailed, like the striping on her tracksuit and everything, and even like the little zipper and the little zipper hook up around her neck and everything is really awesome. Knives. It's really cool. Knives gameplay wise, like that long scarf she uses as a weapon in the game. And
can you just turn her a little bit so we can see her eyes? Because she's kind of like at an angle.
Oh, okay.
With her hair.
How's that?
Bangs.
With her bangs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, you'll notice, so this one is a prototype. The prototypes are really fragile, and one of her sides is broken off. So this one, obviously, when you get your final one, will have both. The reason why the prototypes break so easily is because they're made out of resin. So they're digitally printed at this stage out of resin, and resin is inherently very brittle. The final figures are not made out of resin. They're made out of ABS plastic, which is more flexible, soft, doesn't really have any breakage issues. If you've seen like our Power Rangers minis and things like that, you'll know that all those are great. So the ABS plastic really depends on, the brittleness depends on how high the heat is when it runs through the mold, and we found that kind of Goldilocks area of getting it just right. So you get the most detail possible, but without having any breakage issues. So I think we've gotten that down really good. We had 0 breakage issues for Power Rangers. So there's Knives. All right. So Matthew Patel, and Matthew comes with Hipster Chicks. So you get 3 Hipster Chicks. All right, we're gonna move the D&D guy away. He served his purpose. So Matthew comes with 3 Hipster Chicks and himself. The Hipster Chicks basically work like mirror images of him. So if he moves, they all get to move, but they can go in different directions. If he casts a spell and launches a fireball at you, all the Hipster Chicks get to launch a fireball at you. Matthew Patel is super powerful in the right hands, so you can really do some damage. So the Hipster Chicks, again, like really cool. This is something to note here. this is done right now painted in orange for our prototype, but in the final production, it's an orangey translucent plastic that kind of, you know, has a nice effect. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really going to be cool. So that way when the light hits it and stuff, it really looks like fire, like a fireball kind of casting off their hand. So it won't just be plain old orange paint on there. The wings are really cool, very textured. Like you can see, you know, all the spines of the wings and stuff like that. So these are really awesome. And you get 3 hipster chicks and Matthew in the base set, and that's the first Evil X that you fight. So the last figure that I'm going to show you from the base set is Ramona, our Ninja Delivery Girl. So this is an early version of Ramona. Everything was pretty much near final. Her bag and her skates and everything else and the goggles on her head. The one thing that you'll notice, and if you look at the Kickstarter page, is her eyes are a little funky, and this was not the final version of her. So as we go through the sculpting process, we'll keep refining. So the early sculpt of this, so this is a resin just painted. This resin didn't have the correct definition around her eyes. So we went back and did some resculpting work, and it's going to be hard to see on the camera here, but this is basically her final unpainted version. And there's a lot more definition around the eyes, so that way when the eyes are pad printed and show up, it'll have the definition and they'll look right, just like all the other characters do. So she was the last one to really get her eyes finished and get them just right. So that's what comes in the base game. So that leads me to some of the other figures, and I was going to show you a little bit of the process. So this is a final resin of that Ramona, but to kind of give you an idea of some of the others, like what the resins look like. So these were the other Ramonas with final eyes. Here's a Scott. This was a Scott resin. All his eyes and everything and all the detail on him are final as well. So if you're backing the Kickstarter or plan on buying the game in the unpainted version, this is basically what your figures will look like. They will be one solid color, all molded the same color, unlike a painted version, which will be painted and molded in certain colors. So for example, Scott's hair, that kind of brownish orange, it's molded that way to give you the best resolution and really make the colors pop, and that way we can do shading and all sorts of stuff on there. But if you choose to go unpainted, you're just going to get an unpainted figure that will be, you know, molded in the same types of plastic, but then you can paint it yourself and do your own custom job. So that's a little insight into some of the process. I can show you some others. So this is a good example. So the twins, so we have these guys. That was the very first prototype for the twins. So you'll notice that it's actually one piece. They're joined together. That's the way we sculpted it to make sure that pose made sense. And then the next step was to break them apart. So we had that version of them. Then we went and we started to test their sculpts and their molds, but as 2 different pieces, and that's the way they'll come in the game when you get the twins. They'll come as 2 separate pieces, but then obviously you compose them and stand them together. And then here is a Paint Master where we're using the one where they're connected for the Paint Master. And that way the factory has an example of all the colors and we hit all the colors properly. But there they are, painted. So that's a good indication of what they'll look like as they come out. Again, some of it's painted, some of it's pad painted printing. Others, it's molded in plastic and then given shading and highlights on top of it. It's a pretty long process. There's a lot of hand painting that happens. Like all those tiny little details are usually done by hand. So that's expensive, but it makes the figures look awesome. So there you go. There's the twins in their various stages of development. So let's see, another one over here that I can show you some different stages of development. So Super Gideon, I don't have a resin anymore of him, but this was a very early prototype. That is not final, but that's an early prototype of Super Gideon. So you can see we were testing the mold and making sure that the sculpt was right and all the detail was there that we wanted. but it wasn't molded in any of the colors that we would want the final to be in. We are testing his sword. Like this sword is pretty fragile. It actually comes out of his hand. So that was a really early version of him. But then his final paint master and ready to go is here. So here we have all the proper paint on his sword. Looks like really cool steel, has nice shading. The figure himself, his hair is right. That's molded in the proper color. His facial expression, right? He's got like that, really serious kind of like grimace going on. And there you go. So he's Super Gideon. So if you compare Super Gideon, again, let's bring out our poor D&D guy. Our D&D guy, yeah, he doesn't have a chance. So Super Gideon's gonna eat him for lunch. So go back to the dungeon, D&D man. So there you go. So that gives you some insight into the process. If I had one of the resins still, you'd see the gray resin that we did first, and then it kind of moves up to the final. And a whole set of these finals, there's only 2 sets in existence of the finals. One of them is here with us in the States, and then the other one is at the factory in China, and that's what they'll use as physical examples as they're actually going through the painting process and manufacturing the figures. And then generally one of us from the company will actually go over there and oversee that on site as it's coming off the line and make sure everything's right. So the last time when we finished up Power Rangers, myself and another person in the company went over there for 2 weeks and spent a couple weeks in China making sure Power Rangers was perfect. So you can see those guys. I'll show you a few more examples. So here we have Super Robot, early version or unpainted version, and then Super Robot, colored version. You can check them out, kind of see the backs. He's pretty simple, he's nice and smooth. One thing you'll notice for the people that are getting unpainted, this line V kind of design there, it is sculpted into his sculpt. So you'll see the lines in the sculpt of the unpainted, and then you can get that definition and actually hit it just right. So that's just not a line painted over him, it's part of the sculpt as well. So that's really cool. All right, we'll put those guys over there. Let's look at a couple more resins. So here's an example. That's a early an unpainted but a resin of Steven. So you can kind of see them side by side, what they'll look like. His guitar strap and everything is really nice. Like the guitar strap as it goes around his body even has like a nice little twist in it, so it looks natural. It's really cool. These came out great. Brian did a great job working with our sculptor to make sure that everybody looks exactly the way they should look and represent the characters the way he sees them, because he created them. So another little piece of insight, you probably won't be able to see this the best, but this is an example of paint masters. So not only does the factory get physical representations of all the figures as prototypes to use as a guide, they also get things like this that really break down every little piece of the figure and what every color should be. So that way it's exactly right and they're consistent across the line and we don't have any problems. So this is I just basically opened up a bunch of these, took a screenshot for you guys and printed it out so you could get a little bit of insight into how that works. So we have that. Let's look at some other characters. So here's Lucas with his deck. So he's got that. He's really cool. His hair looks great. He wouldn't want it any other way. Who else do we have? Oh, my favorite. We have Todd in full vegan power mode. His eyes are all lit up. He's ready to do something terrible before having some chicken parmesan. We also have Robot 1. There we go. And Envy. So Envy's really cool. I don't remember if we've spoiled what she does yet gameplay-wise up on the Kickstarter page, but when we post an update that really kind of goes into her gameplay, you definitely want to check it out. She's really a lot of fun, and it really represents what her character does in her relationship to Scott and the other characters in the world. So she's a lot of fun. She's kind of an agent of chaos in the game. All right, so let's see. Who else do we want to show off here? Another Ramona. So again, this is a Ramona before the final eye design and eye sculpt was done. And Gideon. So that's Gideon before he's in Super Gideon mode. Just kind of rotate these in and out. And then Roxy. Yeah.
Can you swivel Roxy just a little bit?
Yeah.
See your eyes? There you go.
All right. Kind of give her a full turn.
Yep.
She's got a lot going on. She's a really nice detailed figure. Yeah, she's great. So, so here's Subspace Ramona, which is pretty awesome. So she's got her hammer. She, of course, has her bag. There we go. Put Lynette up there. And then the last one that I have to show you, that I have here with me, is Negascott. So Negascott is right that we know is the mirror image of Scott Pilgrim, his greatest enemy himself. He's got really cool red glowing eyes, like kind of a creepy mouth, and just basically the whole negative zone sort of treatment and everything. He looks really cool. So he's a fan favorite, and his gameplay is really fun too. So check that out. All right, so what else comes in the box? So there's lots of things. We've got some of the prototypes here I can show you of some of the 3D objects. These are just the 3D objects that come in the base game. I don't have everything handy for all the expansions, but we have things like the drum kit. So the drum kit's really cool, even as a kick pedal on the back side. We have things like the amps. These are really thick. They're really cool. They hold up very, very well. We've been using them a lot. And these aren't even the final ones. These are prototypes. So we have like the speakers, right, and amps and things like that. And then tables. Tables and chairs. Microphones. And the scale isn't quite right on these because these were prototypes that we're using for testing. So as these get thrown around the board and they take damage, you'll turn them over. So for example, if this table gets whacked and thrown, it'll turn over, and you can see there's a damaged pattern on the bottom side of that, and that tells you that this has been damaged, and if it gets damaged again, then it's out of the game. So you can see there's all the tables and chairs and amps. So that's some of the furniture. The other piece of furniture that comes in the game is the stage. So we went back and forth on some various designs for this. Originally at one point, and I'll show you in a little bit, the stage was part of the pop-up, and we really didn't like it. We went through a bunch of different prototypes, went back and forth with the factory in developing it, and we didn't like that the stage was flimsy, and we didn't think that it would hold up, and we thought it would wear out over time. So we replaced it with this really solid stage. It has markings on it of where things go to start the game. So the microphone goes there, and an amp goes there, and you start it that way, and then the good guys start up on the stage, and the bad guys start on the other side of the board if you're playing this scenario. So the other thing that's really nice about this is that we have this really solid stage that you can flip over, and then once you've built all your 3D components, they all store in here and it'll protect them in the box. So when you go and pack your game back up in the base game, you have this to kind of put your components in there, and that's the way we've been using it. And it's worked out really nicely, and it's much better quality than if we left the stage as a pop-up, because this thing's super solid. So that's the stage. Some of the other things that come in the box, again, these are prototypes, not final. These are prototypes for the dual player board. So this is only one layer. The final boards are dual layered. So if you've ever seen dual layered gameplay boards, all these little cutouts are little pockets, so you can put your tokens in there that come with the game as you level up those powers and you move up and down the tracks. but the layered board is really nice because it doesn't fall through. It's really high quality. They're super thick and chunky. And then we also have the dials to keep track of your health at the top. And when you dual layer it, the dial tabs and machinery and all that are protected. So they'll last a long time. And then you just have the little piece of it peeking out at the top so you can just kind of spin it around. So again, these are prototypes. Even some of the gameplay on here has been tweaked since we were using these in the last 6 months. But I'll just give you a quick little view of some of these guys so you can check them out. There's Scott. There's Steven. Knives. My favorite, Kim. And Ramona in her Ninja Delivery Girl mode. So that goes with the first figure. So these are all the main characters that are on the good guy side in the base game. So last but not least, the other thing that I wanted to show you are the dice. So these are dice from base game and a few of the expansions as well. They're all mixed together. So this is, this is all volume 1. No, there's some other stuff in here too because I know I mixed them together. So the dice are really high quality. These are printed right on there. They're not going to wear off. This is a factory that makes probably some of the nicest dice that you've seen in the industry. We've used them a bunch. If you're familiar with our other games, we like custom dice quite a bit. We tend to never do boring dice with pips. We always make nice custom dice. And in this case, doing it with this treatment got us the best results. Sometimes we do engraved dice, sometimes we don't. It just really depends. So these are all the dice, all the different colors depending on what they do, like the magic dice and the regular player dice. And there's different dice that come in different expansions depending on the characters involved. They're really great. They're nice, chunky dice. They roll great. And the quality of them is fantastic. They look really nice and they pop. So these are pretty much final going into production. And you'll get them depending on what level you back or what expansion you pick up. And you'll get all the dice. So I think that's most of what I've got to show you. Oh, I have one more. Oh, that's MB. So we have there. But yeah, everything else. So there's lots of little bits, tons of little tokens and little stars that you use to track your powers as you unlock them. Other stuff as you power up, you get little stars for your boards. There's massive amounts of those in the box. We of course have all the cards. I'm not going to go into all the cards today because they're being revealed in various updates and throughout the campaign on updates and unlocks and things like that. So you'll get to see these, check out the updates. There's a new one going up every day up until the campaign ends. So we've got all of that. This is the size of the box. So this is a big beefy box. It's about the depth of our Power Rangers boxes that we did before. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Last thing I'll show you is the board. So the evolution of the board, this was the board I was talking about at the beginning that we weren't super happy with. So as this board opened up, this was the original stage that was attached to the backdrop, and it kind of pulled the backdrop a little bit, and it was really flimsy, and we didn't really like it. So we rejected this pretty quickly, and that went away. And then we went to a model where, for the first board, it pops up, it stands perfectly straight, it's really nice. It gave us more real estate to print gameplay data on the edges, and then the stage gets positioned there. And what you'll see on the other boards for the expansions as well, like at the castle with the fountain in the middle, the fountain's really solid, it's really beefy. And then as as Lucas grinds around it, you can slowly take it apart and do damage to it, which hurts him and helps the good guys. So the boards are great. This has a nice linen back to it. It's just, they're beautiful, high quality. If you're familiar again, like with our other stuff, it's typical what you would see from Renegade. So there you go. I don't know if I see any questions. I think lots of cool stuff to look at. Follow us on Kickstarter. Be sure to tune in every day. Look for an update every morning. We're coming up on the last 4 or 5 days of the campaign. Thanks for supporting us if you have already. If you haven't, please check it out. Check out all the minis. And in the future, we plan to go even deeper into the IP and hopefully give you guys more minis in the future as well and more gameplay. But there's lots going on here. Base game, 5 different expansions, all the different fights and scenarios that you can play, and then you can mix and match in those scenarios and change the teams up differently than what comes pre-programmed kind of in the expansions. So check us out on Kickstarter. Thanks for coming, and have a good day. Bye.